"Take it off," the liberal TV host demanded, his voice slicing through the room like a sharp command impossible to ignore. This wasn't a request. It was an order. His gaze was locked onto Karoline Leavitt, a young yet steadfast leader who stood her ground in the middle of the packed room, the air still charged from the press conference she had just concluded. Every eye followed his words to the delicate, gleaming necklace around her neck, a symbol of her faith, her belief in God, and, as many would later say, her unyielding courage. This wasn't about mere jewelry. This was an attempt to embarrass her, to force her into submission, to strip her convictions away layer by layer. But instead, what unfolded became an extraordinary display of grace under pressure. Who is Karoline Leavitt? A fighter in every sense, articulate, bold, and deeply anchored in her principles. She represents a new kind of leadership. Young, yet possessing wisdom beyond her years, she has become a voice for those who often feel unheard. That day, she had just finished addressing the room, speaking on crucial topics: unity, free speech, and the fundamental right to express oneself in a deeply divided world. But clearly not everyone in the audience embraced her vision of freedom. The liberal TV host had a history with her. Their past debates had been heated, but this time, it wasn't about politics or policies. It was about something far more intimate: her faith. "Take it off," he repeated, his tone sharper, louder, as if daring her to refuse. The room fell into a tense silence. Even those who supported him shifted uncomfortably in their seats, uncertain of how far this confrontation would go. But Karoline didn't waver. She met his gaze with quiet resolve, tilting her head slightly as a small, almost imperceptible smile played at her lips. Then, in a calm and measured tone, she responded, "You want me to take it off? My faith, because that's what this necklace represents. My faith, my relationship with God, my strength. And you're asking me to remove it because you disagree with it?" Her words weren't laced with anger or defiance. She didn't raise her voice. Instead, she spoke with a steady confidence that reframed the moment entirely. This was no longer about a simple piece of jewelry. It was about something much deeper. But before revealing how her response left the entire room in stunned silence, it's important to understand what brought Karoline to this defining moment. Karoline Leavitt wasn't born into privilege, nor did she fit the mold of a conventional political figure. Raised in a humble family, faith wasn't just a Sunday ritual, it was the foundation of her life. Her parents instilled in her the belief that in times of uncertainty one should lean on God, draw strength from prayer, and never apologize for one's convictions. "Faith isn't about shouting the loudest," her mother often reminded her. "It's about standing firm in your beliefs, even when no one else does." Karoline carried this lesson with her throughout her life, from high school debates to college discussions where she often found herself the lone advocate for her values. She learned that standing up for one's beliefs often comes with resistance, but she also discovered that unwavering conviction earns respect, even from those who disagree. And standing firm is exactly what she did that day. After the host's pointed challenge, Karoline took a deep breath, centering herself not on his words but on the values she had spent a lifetime cultivating. Faith, she knew, wasn't about shouting back or proving a point through argument. True faith carried power in its quiet strength. "I'm sorry if my necklace makes you uncomfortable," she said simply. She began, her voice steady yet thoughtful. "But I have to ask, why does this offend you so much? Is it really about a piece of jewelry, or is it about what it represents?" There was a shift in the room, subtle yet undeniable. The tension that had been mounting softened just slightly, as if her words had forced everyone to pause, even for a moment. Her tone wasn't confrontational. She wasn't there to argue, to shout, or to condemn. Instead, her words carried a quiet invitation, an urging for the man staring at her with disdain to take a step back and consider. "This necklace," she continued, lifting the delicate pendant between her fingers, "isn't just an accessory. It's a reminder. a reminder of the strength I've had to find in my darkest hours when nothing else could bring me peace, a reminder of the values I strive to live by: love, kindness, and the unwavering belief that every person I meet has intrinsic worth, whether they share my faith or not. The silence in the room deepened. Even the host, who had come prepared to escalate the exchange, to push her into a corner, hesitated. His body language shifted, just slightly. He hadn't expected this. But Karoline wasn't finished. "You see, I don't wear this necklace to force others to believe what I believe. God gives every person the gift of free will, the ability to choose their own path. Whether someone follows him or not, that's their choice, and I respect that deeply. But I wear this," she said, pressing the pendant lightly against her palm, "because it reminds me of something you can't see. It reminds me of how far I've come, of the battles I've fought, of the strength I've found, not by my own will but through God's grace." She let her words linger in the air, allowing the weight of them to settle. Cameras flashed, pens scribbled hastily, but the energy in the space had shifted into something undeniable. "You told me to take it off," she continued, her gaze steady, as if my faith is something I can remove as easily as this chain. "But faith isn't a decoration. It's not something I put on in the morning and take off at night. It's who I am. It shapes every decision I make, every policy I advocate for, every conversation I engage in. And I say this knowing full well that not everyone in this room shares my beliefs. And that's okay." Now her voice wasn't just directed at the host. It was for everyone. For every person in the room who had ever felt ridiculed, silenced, or dismissed because of their beliefs. For anyone who had ever been told they had to hide who they were to be accepted. "I don't wear this because I think my faith makes me better than anyone else," she said, her tone unwavering. "I wear it because it reminds me to be better. To be better than I was yesterday. To be better to my friends, to my family, to be better to strangers who may need kindness more than I realize. That's what my faith stands for, and if that offends you, then maybe the problem isn't my necklace. Maybe it's something only you can reconcile." The liberal host opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. He looked at her, then at the cameras, his expression shifting as he wrestled with the weight of what she had just said. He had entered this moment prepared to humiliate her, to turn her into an example. He had expected a fight, but instead, she had disarmed him. Not with outrage, not with anger, but with truth. And in doing so, she had turned the entire moment on its head. Karoline took a small breath before closing, with words that many later described as the defining moment of her career. Unity isn't about making everyone the same. It's about respecting the differences that shape us. This necklace may symbolize my faith in God, but what unites us as people is far greater than any symbol. It's in how we treat one another, how we listen, how we build bridges instead of burning them. If you disagree with me, I welcome the discussion, but I will not hide who I am, and I would never ask you to either. For a moment there was nothing but silence. And then, applause, loud, unfiltered, undeniable. Even the TV host, visibly unsettled, managed a small nod, perhaps realizing that in that moment, he too had been given grace. What had begun as a confrontation ended in something unexpected: reflection. Some called it a victory for Karoline. Others saw it as something greater. A win for faith, for resilience, for the courage to stand for one's beliefs without tearing others down in the process. And as for the necklace, it remained exactly where it belonged, proudly worn by a woman who refused to shrink in the face of adversity. Because in that moment, Karoline had shown the world what true strength really looks like, not in the symbols we wear, but in the principles we live by.